Uganda's political sphere has become too hot in that some politicians are even thinking of vacating the country. Yes, that's how serious it has become in this dear country of ours. Since the November 18th and 19th protests, we've been seeing people being abducted left, right and center. And in that regard, some decided to even vacate to neighboring Tanzania, neighboring Kenya, neighboring Southern Sudan, neighboring DRC, neighboring Rwanda to seek refuge from what is happening within this country. Well, the messaging from the NRM is that this country is enjoying a lot of peace. That was ushered in by President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. But if you see people vacating the country, left, right and center, that would spell another argument about what exactly is happening within the country. We are here to talk about current affairs with Godber. He is an associate director with the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. And NRM cadre, yes, is also here, Mr. Mike Ssebalu, with whom we are going to expand more on the realities on the ground as far as Uganda's political landscape is concerned. A very good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Godber, politicians are now saying they want to vacate the country. We've already seen people who have been leaving. Busia, at the border, you've been seeing people entering Kenya. People have been entering these other countries within the East African region, saying the situation is colorless. Does that portray a democratic state?
Of course it doesn't. But the truth is that the events that have taken place in this country since 2017, the amendment of the constitution to remove presidential age limit, and then through Arua by election violence, and then the last elections, really have unleashed unprecedented violence in this country that can only be equaled to the violence we know during the time of Idi Amin. So, and you know that it is during those times of Idi Amin and Botti One that we saw many Ugandans leave the country. So I would not be surprised if any Ugandan felt like, it's very uncomfortable living here. When you wake up and you are moving around the streets, along the street, and you don't know what will happen to you. You sleep at night. You don't know when these criminal gangs will come for you, disguising as security. That's the time when you say, okay, if I have somewhere to go, why don't I actually exit this country?
You just switched up the conversation a little bit, Godber, because the other side, which are the criminal gangs you're talking about, the security apparatus are saying the people they are looking for are the criminals who are actually precipitating an atmosphere of violence within the country through peaceful protests.
But you see, let's really be clear. I think we just need to have some basic level of civilization to characterize things properly, because we know that as a nation, any country has security forces, the police, the military, the intelligence, and others. So, and there are codes of conduct, there are codes of practice. There are ways how you arrest people. And whether these are petty criminals, whether they are very dangerous criminals, there are ways on how you arrest these kinds of people. So, but the moment at which people who claim to be from security have to disguise themselves, drive numberless cars, even come to your house with hooded, and come in the middle of the night. Those people have ceased being security. In my view, they can only be characterized as criminals, because that's how criminals operate.
Honorable Mike Ssebalu, of course, we would like to get your perspective on this. Do you also believe security apparatus who are running these people off are criminals?
No, I think I just want to take it from where you started.
Yes.
Trying to characterize Uganda in terms of
peace and all.
Peace and stability.
Yes.
I think that is something that everyone would appreciate. Uganda is a very stable country. Uganda is peaceful, and Uganda remains, it's on record that Uganda remains the biggest host of refugees on the entire African continent, and is among the very, very first ones to do so in the world.
So the open borders policy has been working.
The open borders policy is working. Our refugee policy is a very progressive one that is being understudied globally. Now that is on record. At one point in time, when Uganda was described as unpeaceful and unstable, it used to be a net exporter of refugees. Many people had to run out for their safety, and that was the trend. It is on record that at the moment Uganda is a net importer of refugees.
From that spirit of you helped us and we also want to help you.
From all the neighborhood and everywhere. So that is the position.
We rent you in our time of need, now you can also come.
That is the position globally, that is the record, and that is the practice, and that is the reality on the ground. Now regarding people, moving out and putting claim to instability and all that, I think the dynamics after the elections, the post-election dynamics operate differently. There could be issues here and there, people picked out of their own individual criminal background or tendencies, but that should follow the process of the law. I definitely want to state that such people should be picked, and due process of the law is implemented. But you see, there are people who take advantage of situations. When you're in the elections, there are people who participate or who want to take advantage of that situation for their individual interests, some of which could even be criminal. So it wouldn't be right to make blanket statements without looking at the individual specifics. But with regard, you indicated that Honorable Kyagulanyi wants to leave the country. I think there are also dynamics around that, because Honorable Kyagulanyi participated in an electoral process. He raised a lot of expectations. He has tried going to court. He has tried this and that. It could also be an alternative way of cutting the losses. After losing an election, you need to manage your losses. One of the ways is to say, look, I can't be here. That is an option. But for him to claim that he's not secure, that is definitely not very correct, and it is not a sustainable argument. He could have other reasons.
No, others say it's because his life is being threatened, and that's why he's thinking of vacating the country.
If that is an imagination, then you can take it. But the reality on the ground is that all Ugandans are secure, and is one of those many Ugandans whose security is guaranteed, given the security arrangements that we have in place.
But Honorable Mike Ssebalu, we've continued to see individuals being picked up, because we thought when the president came out, gave his pronouncement about the individuals who are already in incarceration to be released, we thought this practice would end, but it has continued. People are still being held incommunicado.
You see, one thing that we need to appreciate is that government works on the basis of intelligence. Because you need to ask, why are they picking that particular person and not you?
Indeed.
You are Ugandan. Have you been picked?
No.
So we also need
But I've been tracked.
It could be for whatever reason, but maybe you were tracked and you are found not to be what they thought you were.
Indeed.
And
Go
that's
ahead.
why so that's why I'm saying it is on the basis. That's why I'm saying it is on the basis of intelligence.
Indeed.
So for me, on matters that border on criminality, I don't want to stake for individuals without exactly knowing what they've been doing or what. But what I want to put emphasis on is that when such people are picked, let them be prosecuted and brought before the due process of the law. At least that is something that must be done to conclude the process logically. But the question of picking people do certain things in their private and other lives that you may not be privy to. So once the process is on, let it follow the due process of the law. But we shouldn't argue that people should never be picked, even when there is evidence that they're involved in criminality or some wrongdoing of some nature. But when they are picked, let them be subjected to the due process.
Godber, there is evidence that these individuals who are being picked are criminals. That's according to Honorable Mike Ssebalu.
No. I think I want to be clear. That's why I clearly stated.
I think he didn't say that.
I qualified my statement that security operates on the basis of intelligence. Whatever intelligence they have, let them use it in accordance with the due process of the law. So I've not said someone is a criminal, someone is what, but if there is evidence.
But you agree that this practice of picking people should stop?
No. I'm not saying it. I'm qualifying it. It should be undertaken in accordance with the law where there is evidence that some wrongdoing has been made. Because you see, when we say it should stop, and there are people who are plotting and who are engaged in criminality, then you are subjecting the lives of other people to a risk. Because at the end of the day, we need a stable country. Whether we are in politicking period, when we are not, let's look at the country being stable for everyone, for every actor, for every political party, or for every political ideology.
Godber, are these arrests being conducted to tighten the security bolts within this country, or is this simply political persecution?
I think let me make just 3 quick comments and end with that. The first one is the refugee policy, the open border policy. I mean, there is always an attempt to claim that the current regime brought about the open border policy. Uganda has had an open border policy since independence. That the first refugees to be welcomed in this country were people from Rwanda. I grew up in Western Uganda, in Ntungamo, and our neighbors were always people of Rwandan origin.
Indeed.
And they came. Some of them went into the refugee camps. Some of them came and settled amongst us, and they were our best friends, our best neighbors, and until 1980, I think 82, when, because of the insurgency, the NRA insurgency, then the UPC regime decided to turn against them. Me as a young person,
because they were supporting Museveni.
They were alleged to support Museveni, but me as a young person, I had never even thought that these people were from Rwanda. I knew they were Ugandans. So for me, Uganda has always had an open refugee policy, and I think it's a good policy if it's managed properly. Secondly, Mike talks about security, stability, and peace, and I really would like to appeal to Ugandans to understand the differences between these concepts in terms of operation. When you have security, that means you have security. That means you have sufficient personnel in terms of the military, in terms of the police, and intelligence. You are able to create security. Security creates stability, because then so that's what we can say. Oh, we have had stability because there is no violent overthrow of government. There are no armed groups. There is less crime, so we can say we have stability. But peace is a condition, and it is a product of security and stability. Peace means that you have a condition where human beings live in an environment of freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from persecution, freedom to assemble, freedom from hunger. There is prosperity. That's what you call peace. Those conditions of peace in Uganda, they don't exist. For many Ugandans, those conditions of peace do not exist. So anybody who argues that there is peace in this country, for me, is manifested. They actually don't understand.
But Godber, you've been able to come to NTV Uganda and offer a dissenting opinion. You haven't been picked up by any official security apparatus. Isn't this a representation of what democracy is all about, or even peace?
No, that's different, because that's what I'm saying, that if there's anything that we should credit President Museveni for, it is for creating security and stability. But peace is far away from where we are, because and that brings me to the point that we are talking about these kidnappings and abductions. Because in peaceful conditions, you don't have people living in absolute fear. Remember that all the regimes, because if you look back in the 1970s, you can actually say there was security and stability, because you know, there were no acts of extreme violence. The acts of extreme violence were directed on individuals. In this country right now, right from Arua to Kasese, where there was a massacre in the palace, you are talking about acts of extreme violence. And then you come to the elections. Man, you can't, where in a country where you have an election, where you basically, everybody is voting at gunpoint or campaigning at gunpoint, that's, you cannot call that peace. You cannot call that an election. And just to emphasize, I agree with Mike that when there is intelligence, there is that someone has committed an offense, a crime, or is about to commit an offense or a crime, the agencies of the state that are responsible should be able to take action. For the kinds of crime we are dealing with, you are basically expecting the police force to take action. Most of these young people that are being abducted, really, I don't think that they are dangerous criminals. Because we have seen dangerous criminals here, people who killed the late Kawesi, the late Chirumira, and the late Abductions and others. Those are dangerous criminals. You would expect that when, in case you have intelligence leading the arrest, the level of preparation you need to do to arrest them is definitely should be elevated. But the young people that are being picked from their houses and from their townships, and then those ones that are being picked at night, because you see, intelligence means that you have done surveillance, you've done the historical profile of these people, you know who they are, you've done surveillance on them, and even if we wanted to arrest you, it is possible that we can actually besiege your house if we know you are in a house, and in the morning we are able to come and arrest you. Because nobody has proven that these guys are armed people that they are going to shoot all these security people in case they show up. But I think that the posture of the regime right now is to instill fear in everybody, because that's one of the biggest instruments by which the regime now survives.
You mean the heavy deployment, Mr. Tumushabe, is all geared towards instilling fear among Ugandans? Absolutely. What would be the end game?
No, because you see, the end game is that I stay in power. If you are President Museveni at 35 years in power and counting, in most cases, all these regimes, even if it was me or Mike or you being president, after 35 years, these regimes lose favor with the population. At that point, and you can see all of them from North Africa to the Cape, all of these regimes where presidents have stayed for so long, they mainly instill fear as an instrument of regime survival.
And you also said that they've fallen out of favor with the population, but President Museveni did garner some 58.6% of the vote in the just concluded election. Sassou Nguesso, right here in the Republic of Congo, he's been in power for over 36 years. He got 88.6%.
You know, it's very frustrating when enlightened people discuss these things as if we are basic people.
So what is happening here with the numbers? What are we seeing? Is it make-believe?
Because first of all, in fact, I probably shouldn't go into the detail.
Yes.
All that I can say is that Bobby Wine, who is the declared run-up in the elections, said his votes were stolen. Not so long ago, President Museveni came on TV and said his votes were stolen. The fact that you have these two guys agreeing, for me, represents a crisis that we have as a country. That if you had a country that is properly functioning, all the machinery of the state would have been activated to actually find out what happened with the election. Where you have a head of state coming on TV and speaking with a straight face and say, my votes were stolen, I can tell you have a crisis. The problem is that sometimes we discuss these things and then start throwing percentages. I always give we will throw percentages that do not make sense. I've been giving an example that I go to Ruhama East constituency where I come from in Tungamo, And everywhere I visited, at the 10 polling stations in Ruhama, everybody says, oh, by 11 a.m., the regime machinery had ticked all the ballots. And the best example for me is my 75-year-old auntie who walked 3 kilometers to our polling station to vote. And she reaches there and she's told, your vote has been cast for you. And she had to walk back home. Now, if you are careful and you listen to all these cases across the country, by the way, then you realize that both Museveni and Kyagulanyi are correct. That actually the Ugandan elections were stolen. I don't think that we would say the ones of NRM were stolen, the ones of NUP. For me, stealing of elections means that you have stolen the elections of Ugandans, you've actually subverted their sovereignty, and any serious government would consider that a crisis, and there would be a very, very properly constructed inquiry to understand what happened in that election.
Honorable Mike Ssebalu, please react to Godber Tumushabe's submission just right now. He just said too much, but you can make a point. Could you start from a point where police is supposed to be picking up these people, but we are seeing SFC, which is in charge of protecting the president, so meaning is the president gearing towards consolidating power? If police is not involved, police is involved with security, SFC protecting the president, so they will be consolidating power for the president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
Yeah, Godber is always good at creating interesting narratives. And if you are to go by his flowery kind of presentation, you can easily be ambushed and derailed in terms of focusing on the real issues.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
Like, for instance, he gave a good indication, according to him, that open policies started in the 60s, which is true. And during that time, we saw so many people coming over, running away from violence, from instability, and going where there was stability. And true to the fact that Uganda in the 60s was very stable and peaceful. And therefore, it made a lot of sense for people running away from problem areas, from violence, from instability to Uganda.
Trouble only came in 1971. Did that
happen during Amin's era?
Yes.
No.
It did happen.
The reverse was true. Ugandans were running for safety in the neighborhood. What is happening now is that people are running away from instability to stability. The influx now can only be explained by the stability of Uganda. And that's why
that is a shift. But finish.
You know, I had many interjections to make, but I held my fire as a peaceful person.
I held my fire.
As a peaceful person,
all right,
I'm
Mike.
demonstrating that. So the influx now from the neighborhood all over the place to a tune of about 1.4 million people can only be explained by people running away from instability, people running away from violence, people opting for secure environment, and Uganda happens to provide that. So you simply cannot discount it by saying that the open door policy, the open border policy has always existed. Why then is it that it is at the pinnacle of its
what I do know, Mike, is that we do have some refugees who are leaving the country, but not because of instability. Well, they are saying because of the peace that has been realized in their countries, like Southern Sudan. They are going back. They are leaving Bidi and all these settlements. They're going back saying, well, there is peace in the country. We can do some agriculture because,
no problem. But
it's not instability. Go ahead.
It's not instability. So it can only be explained by the policy itself, the implementation of the policy, but also the environment pertaining on the ground. People can only run to a secure place if they're running away from insecurity. You can't run from insecurity to insecurity. Simply cannot work. It doesn't make sense at all. So that is a point that we need to appreciate. You may not like Museveni or his government, but you need to appreciate those variables that have been recognized.
Is it true, Mike, that these refugees are allowed to vote in our system?
No, the refugees are not citizens.
Godber, you've had it before. Refugees are voting in our system.
But
let him first finish.
You see, where there are general rules, And if for one reason or the other some people are breaking it, then they're supposed to be reprimanded.
Because I've had since it's President Museveni who authored, who has kept this open doors policy alive, these refugees believe like by voting him or to stay in power, they'll be voting for someone who would protect them, who is President Museveni.
I think that is a narrative that is brought to try and discount the victory of Museveni. You know, people always come up with the narratives because that is not the norm.
All right,
if the exceptions and that is not the norm. They're not citizens, and therefore they don't have any right to vote to determine the leadership of a country where they are hosted as refugees.
So away from refugees.
So now I simply wanted to put that in proper perspective, that there is a reason of stability and evidence of it that has explained this influx to the tunes that we are witnessing. Now, regarding the electoral process, I think we had an election. For me, I don't know why people are downplaying the success story of Kyagulanyi. Kyagulanyi, as a first timer to get the kind of votes he got, did greatly well. If I were one of his handlers, I would use that to build better momentum
for 2026,
for further engagement and for 2026. But his handlers are not strategic, because they are then creating a narrative that even denies them an opportunity to appreciate the good effort they made. So he was good, and he did good in terms of the vote he got. But he was simply not good enough for all the Ugandans. He did well, and you could see that he got some advantage in terms of performance.
And he says he could have done better if the NRM government hadn't rigged the northern vote, the western vote,
no, I think,
and the eastern vote.
No, you know, the pattern is quite clear. Where he won, like in Central,
you lost.
And we are decent enough to say that we lost. And as a party, we are looking at what could have been the reason, or what is it that went wrong, that caused that level of performance.
Have you been able to ascertain why you performed abysmally?
And we've accepted that, because he won, even our MPs lost, which then corroborates that there was something that maybe was in favor of his candidature, or something that didn't work so well for us. But the rest of the country, he lost in North, he lost in the West, he lost in the East, even his MPs lost. Now, for me, that is enough evidence in terms of the pattern, because you can't claim to have one where you lost all the MPs.
But the position of the party right now, Mike Ssebalu, is that they are not conceding to have lost in the central region. The government and the president is saying they were actually cheated in the central region. Yeah,
but that's why I'm saying we are looking at what happened. What could have been the reason?
What could have gone wrong?
That's why there is that debate. But the results, as they are, even at the presidential level and at parliamentary level, were not as what we expected. And for the time being, that appears to be something we need to look at as a party for further engagement. But when you look at the other areas, the correlation between the performance of the candidates and their members of parliament is a clear indication that he was not good enough for the rest of Uganda.
What are they talking?
And for me, his handlers should be happy that he even got what he got, and therefore use it as a basis to build better presence and better connotation on the presidency. So that is something that we need to appreciate. He lost, but he raised the expectations. You know, when you raise expectations, it catches up with you. When the reality finally dawns, you find yourself neither here nor there. So that explains the pronouncements you are hearing. One thing I'm going to court, next thing I'm withdrawing from court, next thing I'm public opinion. So you try to create a way of remaining relevant. Even this statement of claiming to be leaving the country is one of the PR. You know, you must create that PR machinery that allows you to remain in the media, to remain relevant, and to remain an issue of discussion, because sooner or later the candidature of Kyagulanyi and his politics is soon getting to the periphery, and people will be now looking at what next, what way forward. Soon the debate will be more on who is going to be the leader of opposition, something that may relegate the party leader
or the
to a back
speakership
seat.
race, which is a conversation which we are going to be getting into after that short break at 8:30. But then I'd like to engage you on that issue. Godber Mushabe, what do you make of what Honorable Mike Ssebalu has been saying?
No, I find it quite intriguing. Mike is a good speaker on these things, and I have always told him.
Don't flatter me.
No,
Trying
no,
to
no.
flatter me.
I always
Allow me my independence and objectivity.
On the other side. Flattering comments on
I
this
always
side.
tell Mike that I admire his ability, to engineer some of these things
That's right.
and make some what looks like really valid points.
But help us understand Godber Mushabe,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the president is saying, I was cheated in the central region, and at some point he told us it was sectarian voting. Uganda choosing Uganda.
You see, that's the point I was trying to make, actually going to make, that any of the NRM people or Musevenists will tell you, the president relies on intelligence, that he is more informed than all of us, so we should take everything he says as gospel truth. So in other words, when the president comes and says, oh, these young people that are being tortured, kidnapped and tortured and killed, that are insurrectionists, then the Ssebalus want to tell us that, oh, no, the president has intelligence, so we should all believe him. When Museveni comes and says, my votes were stolen, I want to believe them for once and say, maybe the president has intelligence, that the votes were stolen, and therefore he is actually illegitimately in power. He should be leading or constituting an inquiry.
Maybe he was saying he was cheated and he might have won with a bigger margin, like maybe 70 to 80%.
But you see,
ended up getting 50,
if you are
58
president,
because he was cheated.
When he addressed us, he was not talking as NRM chairman or flag bearer, because those are completely different people. If you are NRM chairman and flag bearer, you are cheated, you also go and complain like everybody else.
Yes.
But when you are president and commander in chief, you don't come and spread rumors on TV. Because when you say your votes were stolen, and your other competitor is saying that his votes were stolen, as president and commander in chief, you need to understand that there is a crisis of the institutions that actually manage our elections. That's the Uganda police, the Electoral Commission first of all, and then the Uganda police, which is supposed to provide security. In a country where people act normally, where leaders act normally, a statement by the president that the elections were stolen would even require the chairman of the Electoral Commission to resign. Yes. I don't see why that guy should even stay in office for another 24 hours.
Godber Mushabe, please hold that thought and we go for a break, but we shall come back and start from that same point. Well, you're still watching Morning at NTV. I do have Mike Ssebalu. He is a senior NRM cadre, and also Godber Mushabe, an associate director from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. We're going to take another breather and return with this conversation, largely focusing on the speakership race. From the Great Lakes Institute on Strategic Studies, with whom we're expounding on what is happening in the country, current affairs. In 2016, the Central Executive Committee of the NRM came out to talk to the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, that is Mr. Jacob Oulanyah, and also the Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, on the rift that had developed between the two. You had Oulanyah, who wanted to run against Kadaga to become Speaker, but then SEC intervened and said, let Speaker run for another 5 years so that she could exhaust her 10-year tenure. Oulanyah, being the obedient man he said, okay, let's see how it plays out. So 2021, Oulanyah is expectant of the Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga, stepping aside so that he can take over the amount of Speaker as agreed in 2016. And guess what? What you've been reading in the news. The Speaker of Parliament wants to come back for another 5-year tenure. But will Jacob Oulanyah let her have her way? I still do have the two gentlemen with whom we are going to be expounding on the speakership race that is heating up ahead of the campaigns in April. Yes, very good morning once again, Honorable Mike Ssebalu and Godber Mushabe. Let's talk about the speakership race. What do you make of what is happening, Godber?
All that is happening is predictable.
You think?
Yes, absolutely. Without any doubt, without any shadow of
So
doubt.
you had expected Kadaga to switch sides
Oh yeah,
after
oh
giving
yeah,
her
oh, yeah.
word?
Oh yeah. I actually, I think I said in 2016 that I see Rebecca Kadaga staying around as long as Museveni is around. I don't see her going anywhere. But secondly, what you are seeing and what you, because it has been playing out time and again, the things in this country that happen are so predictable that, you know, to an average person, you can be able to predict what's happening. Because essentially, when you see the speaker race and the way it's happening, you're talking about the collapse of institutions of state. Because the parliament, my view is that from the Tojkwatako debate in 2017, what we had as parliament basically ended. And what we have now is a group of MPs who sit around and they also pretend that they are legislating, but actually they also know that they don't have power. And thirdly, is what you have seen playing out right from 2006, where there has been concentration of power in the president, but also where the NRM as a political group takes over the management of every aspect of the state, in the sense that you no longer have a state. You have an external group of people who capture the state and manage it. Because I think when you look at what's happening across the board, whether it is Toji Kwatako, whether it is the budget, whether it is now the speaker race, you really look at the three principles: the president, the deputy speaker, and the speaker, more or less like conspirators. Because you move the whole question of electing a speaker of parliament to start discussing it as a sake matter, as a matter that the president summons these people like little children.
So you believe with SEC getting involved, the
Yeah.
executive is also getting involved in the political machinations of the parliament?
You mean the executive as
With SEC getting involved with the
no,
speakership
the
race,
SEC.
you feel like Museveni is actually influencing the decisions
No,
of parliament?
it's everything is Museveni, because there is no the SEC is Museveni. What is SEC? I mean, for all intents and purposes, these are honorable ladies and gentlemen, but they know that they have no power. They know that they have to do the bidding of the president. So as far as I'm concerned, the final decision maker of who becomes Speaker of Parliament becomes the president. So in this event, I can predict, for example, that I don't see Kadaga going anywhere. I can predict that President Museveni does not want a crisis on his hands, because he's already focused on the 2026 elections. And I think that I can also predict that he's looking for a constitutional amendment to change from a presidential system of government to a parliamentary system of government. If there's anything that the president will want from the 11th parliament, it is that amendment. And I am pretty sure that President Museveni, the way he operates, he has the discipline to wait out a number of things to be able to get the prize. So I can see him sacrificing Olanya. No matter what deals they made at the time of SEC in 2016, I can see him sacrificing Olanya to keep Kadaga, so that he keeps the group together to be able to get the prize of a constitutional amendment to move to a presidential system.
It's really unfair that we've actually secluded this conversation to only Olanya and the Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga, when there are other opposition leaders who also want the same position. It seems like they have no chance.
No, but you see, some of these things,
This is an NRM
some of
affair.
these things have to be debated. They don't have to be debated as rituals.
Yes.
Because we know, unless one hasn't been living in this country, we know how the political game plan is done.
Right.
So to say that there is Ibrahim Ssebalu Uganda also contesting for speaker, I mean, it is really to run away from the reality of our politics. So I think when we discuss these things, we got to be fair to Ugandans by actually focusing on the real issues.
Okay,
because
the
I think the
speakership
real
race
issue
is pitted against NRM and NRM, which
Yes,
is
exactly.
Olanya and the Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga. What do you make of this, Honorable
No,
Mike?
it's actually Olanya, Rebecca Kadaga, and Museveni. Those are the three. Yeah.
All right. All right, Mike Ssebalu.
Yeah, thank you very much. My brother seems to sit in meetings where I don't go. So
I'm a policy analyst.
He's privy to some information, and I will not begrudge him for that. But let me take it that he's a good speculator. With a measure of...
Yes.
But what I want to say is that we need to appreciate that the party has a role to play in determining who the speaker is, more so the ruling party. Now, NRM is the ruling party, and NRM has one majority of members. So for it to take part in determining who steers parliament is not anything that you'd blame NRM for. And the top organ of NRM is the Central Executive Committee, which also has a bearing and has an interest in how parliament is governed, how parliament is run, because all the promises that we've made to lead the country for the next 5 years is largely going to be implemented by laws passed by parliament. So it's of interest to the party and to the top organ of the party to know who is going to be the leader of parliament and how parliament is going to function in a manner that allows the manifesto
What's
to
the
be
party
implemented.
position right now, Mike Ssebalu? Is it the party throwing its weight behind Olanya or the speaker, Rebecca Kadaga?
That's why I'm saying that the Central Executive Committee definitely is going to play a role.
Indeed.
Right now, what we are seeing are individuals expressing interest.
Indeed.
And you can't deny them. Kadaga, as a sitting MP, seeking for re-election and getting another mandate to lead the parliament, that is a right that she enjoys and that must be appreciated. Olanya also looking at a possibility of stepping ahead and being in charge of mantle and stop playing second fiddle. That is also a right that is entitled to. And all the other members that have expressed interest. Even Uganda, I don't discount him. He is a member of parliament, and to be a speaker, you need to be a member of parliament, and he has the qualifications to do so. So, regarding the presentation and expression of interest, I think it is perfectly in order. But what is now of concern to the party is the manner in which that expression was taken. It was taking a trend that could be potentially dangerous in terms of dividing and create divisions early in the day.
But if SEC refuses to honor its pledge of 2016 and goes with the whims of Rebecca Kadaga to, remain as Speaker of Parliament, won't that demonstrate that it has lost all its purpose or even the strength?
No. What I think and what I know SEC is going to do, SEC is going to harmonize the interests of the two contenders and make sure that it comes out with a model of determining who then becomes the speaker in a manner that does not divide the party. And already I'm told that the president met all the candidates and implored them to engage without causing divisions or without even attacking one another in a manner that could be potentially injurious to the party. So at the end of the day, SEC has a role to play, and SEC will be in position to read the mood in the House, to read the mood in the country, to also look at the other different variables within the House, and this is a matter that SEC will have to...
And this is a conversation...
And it will be sorted in a manner that is amicable. I don't think we'll have a winner and a loser. A win-win situation definitely will
Indeed,
be,
and this is a conversation that could take till forever. But we've run out of time, unfortunately. Gentlemen, many thanks for having made the time to speak to Morning of at NTV. The issue of security. People are wondering what is happening within our country. Godber Mushabe, the Associate Director at Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies. Thank you. Honorable Mike Ssebalu, thank you very much too. You mentioned something really, really pertinent, that there's a shift from the presidential system of governance to the the parliamentary system of governance. That is something, Godber, I'd like to expand with you on this show some other time. Yes.
It is a speculation.
It is a speculation.
Godber is not anywhere.
And to you who has
It's
been
not
watching
anywhere
this show,
decision
Analysis,
making.
it's analysis based on
now.
the best of information and evidence.
All right, gentlemen.
Actually, it is a rumor.
All right,
It is-
gentlemen.
and
All right.
it is
And
turned
you who has
into
been
a
watching
rumor.
Morning at NTV at home, many thanks for having made the time to watch this show from 6:30 a.m. up to now.